going to go through a couple things. I don't know what I'll title this under. It kind of is what it is. I don't know that there's a lot of different things to really look at individually. The two things I want to point out really quick are the usual. It's one, the VIX, and then the next one's really the DXY. Most of this is stuff I've already kind of gone over before, but this is something I think we'll go over this kind of quick, and then that'll kind of put us where I'm looking at more or less. Overall, just a quick thing. I still think things look horrible, as I said before. Inflation's still bad. We're just talking about like a derivative inflation. We're not like it's not like we're talking about whether deflation is going to happen. Um, it's like inflation is essentially just most likely just going to happen at a slower pace, especially with the food. Most likely with food issues that are going to be coming up next year. Anyway, so let's kind of get into it. With the DXY, our big thing, just ignore these. These are up here to just be out of the way. The big thing about the DXY is coming back down right into this area here. And we can even like extend these. Where is it? Let's do this. So we can even extend these. These are pretty decent weighted points for what they are. And you can see usually it's a lot of fighting once it comes to this area, and then it either pushes up or it pushes back down. So I still think there's a high chance of the dollar pushing down to 98, between 98.3, 98 or 98.3 to this pretty much 100 area before we get a decent bounce. It could come down even farther than that. It's possible. We could see on the month time frames here. Just at the weeks, when we go like the week time frame, we could see here anyway. Just looking out where a lot of the averages were anyway, like just over time. We're looking at just like the horizontal lines. It's kind of weird to say resistance is support for something like this, but still. But we can see here, this is what pretty much at 99.7 right now, or 99. What is like 99.7? Yep. So I could see something like that. We also have this down here. So it's the other averages were down here. So it's pretty hard for me to see it just falling all the way through. We got the days all the way up here. It's not really that big of a deal. But long story short, it just seems like there's a high chance that we'll bounce down here. So what am I trying to say by this? What is kind of the point of all this? The point of this is, and this is why I don't really like a lot of trading in the current market we're in right now, unless people are taking like longer term trades to the downside. It's certain places, which I can go over for some. Um, the general idea is that we have two kind of differing factors. Everything looks really bad, but the dollar itself also looks bad, or equities look bad, but the dollar itself also looks bad. And so you have the dollar that looks good to push down, it looks bad, or it looks like it's going to go down. And so that's keeping things up, or it's keeping things from not falling as much, and that's kind of an issue. So really the main thing I want to point out about here is I still think 98 to 100 is a big chance that it could come all the way down here before it really bounces. So just for like shorts, that is something to always watch out for. And then I'll kind of show with Apple in a sense what I'm talking about with this. We'll go to the day time frame here. We can just see kind of several things we saw from before. This happened, then we started under, then we started under again. You can see the short here. We started above, which is kind of sketchy, but you can see right here another short position, pretty straightforward to take. Everything else this is more or less our range. It's a little bit sketchy though with the dollar going on. So people kind of do what they want to do. This did push down, but for me, this didn't look like anything that was crazy. I wanted to see something start under. This for me was much better. I didn't mess with anything here. But essentially, this is our range. My point about this in regards to DXY is I actually could see the dollar dropping more. And I could see something like Apple coming back up here. I even could see Apple possibly coming all the way back up to 140. We'll see what happens. I wouldn't bet money on it. I'm not going to bet money on it coming back up. But I don't think it's really a safe bet right now to necessarily bet on something like Apple coming down. We can look at a couple other things, see what they look like also as well. I know Apple does look pretty bad for where it is, I guess. Maybe not on the short term. These last 2 days have been pretty decent. If it can get a little bit of a push up, I don't see why it can't come back up into this area at least, right up to here for like a lower high anyway. Yeah, lower high. Let's go to the VIX. Let's just talk about the VIX really quickly. So with the VIX, we kind of talked. Well, I talked about this in one of the other videos, either the last one or the one before, either like a week ago or 2 weeks ago. And essentially, what we're looking for is, let's just do this, kind of get a brief overview. So we're ranging right in between the weeks right now. What's down here, we can see we got the month time frame 375 that just recently formed September. So we have this here. We got the bounce off of that. That was the month bounce. Boom. Came up here. You know, it's not a huge reason at this point necessarily to be bearish on the market based off of the VIX. But of course, you know, there were certain things like I mentioned before in Apple, there were certain things that you could kind of just see. You know, we talk about like starting to hear sketchy, right? Well, first of all, starting under all of this after we just shoot all the way up or start all the way up, but here, so things like that. The main point about the VIX that I think is important is still the week time frames. I don't really care about the day time frame so much, but I guess it's still somewhat important to factor in 27.36. I still think that's somewhat important. That'll keep coming down slightly. That's the 500 day hole right now. 500 average day time frame hole. That's where it's currently at. But I'm more concerned with seeing a week actually start above here, slightly above in this range. That would be pretty nice, or above and getting pressure on it. That would be pretty nice as also. And so, long story short, this is a big bearish signal for the market, like a huge bearish signal for the market. Touching down here could possibly be a huge bearish signal for the market. I do think if we do touch down here, we have this month average right here. So I would see something touching around 18 and then coming back above this at about like 1915, somewhere around there. It would be pretty sketchy, especially like on a month time frame. So we'll see. It's a long way from now. I'm going to start streaming again in the mornings anyway, at least. I take quick break, but I'll be streaming like 2 or 3 times a day now for shorter periods of time. Anyway, for bullish on the market, I would still, same thing as we talked about before. We don't have a single week that starts above this, not a single week that starts above. I'd like to see a week that actually starts under this trend line right here. There's never been a month that started under it either, so week or a month, either one's really fine. But I think that looks, from the VIX perspective, looks really nice to be able to take a safe bet of like, okay, we're going to push up. But until I see that, I don't really believe that there's a clear direction one way or another. I think, especially where it is right now, I think it's set up in a place in regards to analyzing the VIX and taking trades on the VIX, using the VIX as a determinant or like, you know, just like a variable of whether you're going to take a trade or not. Putting like in whatever weight you put on it. I think this is really like an in-between zone where anything really can happen and there's no clear direction. There was quite a bit more so when we had this bounce here. We could quite see this. We did have some bullishness, but then I believe like a day or two after it bounced here, it's just kind of like up, down for some things. Not everything. Most things are down, of course, because everything looks bad. Okay, so now that we got that through, we talked about, just kind of to sum it up again, we talked about, and then I'll put this at the beginning so people can see it also. So the dollar index, I think, has a high chance coming down between 98 to 100, anywhere in that range. And I think that has a chance to kind of keep things, push things up a little bit. The VIX still looks pretty sketchy where it is right now. I think it's in limbo. I'd like to see it start a week above, what is it? I'd like to see it start a week above 26.12. So anywhere between 26.12, maybe 27 would be really nice, starting something up here. That looks good to push up at least anyway, maybe somewhere around 33. Maybe it comes back down again. We can see somewhat of a trend down here, more or less. And it does look more likely that it would want to play the bottom side, but we do run into the issue of down here at this trend line with the last 5 years, you know, a lot of action pushing it up very heavily. I'd like to see a week or a month start under here. So until I see something here, I don't really care too much about using the VIX to try to calculate what direction we might move in now, since we've already used the data. This might keep us up. And now when we get into stuff, I think that could really get us pushing either way. Apple's pushed down quite a bit. We haven't touched the 122 target yet. I think that's fine. I think with what it's done, I think it has a decent chance of pushing back up. I think we could easily see a lower high right here. That could even come up here and then get rejected back down. I still think it's quite possible to also see it come up into this area right here, all the way back up to 138 to 139, maybe even pushing up to 140 before it might want to come back down. So we'll see. That's just I just don't think it's completely certain it's going to go in one direction or another. I could definitely see stuff pushing up from where it is. We'll see. Is the market not open tomorrow? Because the DXY should be. Has it been moving? That's Sunday. It's 8:32. Am I crazy right now? Says it opens at 5 my time on Sunday, but it's not open. So, but anyway, when the DXY and we can get some other things going, I mean, maybe we'll get a better idea. So anyway, let's kind of go through everything now that we've kind of looked at that. I think one of the things I can look at it also to say, I guess, before we really get going is that okay. So I clicked this and I thought it said it was at 40. I was like, what? As I'm looking at the Hang Seng for a while, it's been doing more or less kind of what I thought it would. It still has more room to push up. I don't think it's really a determinant, or there's really any. I don't really think it matters necessarily what happens in the American markets, or what happens in the Chinese markets with the Hang Seng anyway. That's going to impact the American markets. Like I'm not going to look at this chart and then determine anything like with Apple or anything like that. I just don't think it really matters at this point. It looks like it has room to run. We were talking about this spot right here. We started above it, boom, pushed into it a little bit. It had space to move, so it wasn't really incredibly surprising that it pushed up. So yeah, I just want to get that out of the way. So we've already looked at Apple. We talked about Apple. We talked about those. Let's see. The NASDAQ's not open either. Maybe trading's just not open tomorrow. That's interesting. Um, let's see. Weekday. Oh, that's January 2nd. It looks like it's open. They just don't look like they're moving. That's 6:30. It's 8:30 my time. This says 6:30. It's supposed to be open. I don't get it. Maybe something will happen. I don't understand why I'm not getting data. Anyway, because this one should say it's open too already. Yeah, it says it's open. Oh well, I don't get it. Don't care. Paying for it. Not getting data. Not sure why. Anyway, when I look at this, I actually do get somewhat of the same feeling of Apple. We'll see what happens right now. I think it's okay for where it is on the day time frame. I mean, even if we do push down, it looks like a possible floor of 10,852 with a possible ceiling of 11,340. But my one kind of concern here, in a sense, is I could see this pushing up. If we can get like a day that starts above here, I don't see why we couldn't push up for some of these higher areas. If we do get a push down to this 10,852, holding here somewhere around here would give us that higher low, which easily could push this back up. And we do have lower highs. So, if this is like like high, or we like whatever high, lower high, lower high, lower high, lower high, lower high. So just pushing to this ceiling right here gives us a higher high. I think gives us a decent amount of potential to go up. Technically, right now, I'm looking at this, I feel pretty bullish compared to bearish. I don't think there's any specific reason to feel a certain way because this is like, what, 100 points? This could drop almost 100 points before it would push back up, depending on where it starts, because I don't trust this whatsoever at all. Just because it says it's open and I'm not getting data. Whoops. So, but yeah, everything's looking fairly bullish for what it is now. I think Bitcoin's been holding it. Bitcoin looks ugly, though. I don't really think there's anything to really tell from Bitcoin. My biggest concern would be for Bitcoin is if we fall back under, and it's been doing some wonky stuff. If I was messing with this, I don't remember whatever here. I don't remember what specifics. I don't really care to go back. But here's like a possible entry spot we can see here when we get above. Obviously, like I was saying before, we need to get out of 18. Even if it gets past this here, it needs to. I think I was saying it. I was saying around here, I guess. But even if we pass through here, we need to get through 18K. this is like a take profit, get out spot. So I guess I wouldn't have even have bid in for any of this. But the point I wanted to make about this is if I was messing with this, I wouldn't have entered here, and I wouldn't have like exited or like I wouldn't have done anything here, no matter what position. Um, like no matter what I would have been thinking if I was going to trade this in this range, in this area, this timeline, I wouldn't have traded anything here. I wouldn't have traded when this came back up because it still looks horrible. Like what I'm trying to say is we're still above the line and it pushed off right here. So yeah, sure, it's possible that we push up. And when I think about the dollar, I think it does have a really good chance to push up, but I just don't like it. It doesn't look like a safe trade. It really feels like a gamble more than anything, and that's not something I'm really a huge fan of. Is gambling. Let's see. What else do we got that's somewhat interesting? I don't think Home Depot. Home Depot, no. What are some more interesting ones? Mara looks pretty interesting too. I feel pretty bullish on Mara in itself. It's kind of hard to say because this is the first time we've fallen under both. Essentially, we have like a reversal right here. We fall under, and then both of them, we actually start under both, and then we start back above. So this looks like a really nice entry point. I still think this whole thing is pretty sketch anyway. I think a lot of this still is possibly, if anything, really because of the dollar. We might get another push up. Um, we fall under one here. I guess technically we start on the line here, so we don't technically start under. But regardless, you could say, oh, something similar here, and then we push down. So it's possible this does that. I mean, we have heavy resistance in these two spots, but Mar also actually looks pretty bullish for what it is. I don't think PHUN is anywhere close to looking bullish. What I wanted to see for this was if this was here, this pushing back up into this spot. I think for NVIDIA it was the same thing. So let's check that out real quick. Yeah, so for NVIDIA, was that the same thing? Yeah, for NVIDIA, it's pretty much the same thing. Maybe I was talking about it for right here is what I think I was talking about it for. But we can apply the same thing here for NVIDIA. I mean, this looks like it could have a decent run up to 154 tomorrow or the day after. We'll have to see what happens. And then, same thing with Mara, could hit some resistance. I think it has a decent chance trying to push through it, though. There's a lot of room here, even like with this average. Like the high's all the way up here, so there's a lot of room to kind of have it run without it with the and still maintaining in this range anyway. I guess did we beat it there? Yeah. So we have like a high, lower high. There's so much room right here that this can move up and still maintain a lower high for it to move back down. So I definitely think that's something that also is working for it too. I don't know if I feel the same way though about it when I think about this. It seems pretty sketch. This might be a decent level to play. I don't like this structure right here. Looks very sketchy. I feel like I'm feeling fairly bullish about some of these things though. Much more bullish than everything I was saying in the beginning. I'm definitely starting to lean a lot more bullish than bearish. PayPal, the biggest issue I have with PayPal is we didn't hit the line down here. It's known to hit the line. We see here, we see 1, 2, and then from the first one, boom, hits it with an extension. So it didn't hit it here. But I mean, if we're looking at this this pattern, I mean, it has a decent amount of room to run, even if we want to say only up to like 80, which is pretty high for where it is, but that's still pretty nice. It's like 15%, or I guess 14%. So that looks pretty decent too. Qualcomm looks like it could push up. Nothing really too crazy on it. I think Tesla has a lot of room to go. It'd be interesting to see if Tesla, I would be most interested in this 150 to 127 area and seeing what Tesla can do here. I'm not a big fan in this area. One of the things I really didn't like is you could kind of see this would be more likely to get pushed down in this area. Once we had the day start here afterwards, it looks not like an obvious short, but like, hey, we probably shouldn't be in this. So it makes sense that it got pushed down farther. But one of the things I don't like about Tesla here is that we didn't bounce here whatsoever at all. So I just like to see it above this. So it'd be interesting to see if we could start above like 127 or at 127. I think it has a decent chance to go from 127 to 151. But I'm feeling pretty bullish on a lot of this stuff so far, actually. I don't think I'll do a part two. I'll just kind of leave it there. But yeah, I'm feeling pretty bullish on a lot of stuff. And I think that's kind of where I'll leave it. I think I have a feeling we're going to start off to a fairly bullish week. We'll have to see where the dollar